Oh, my goodness. Really? The 100 book challenge number 17. 17 already. Oh, it is Frazetta book cover art. Oh, the glare is terrible. Let's hold it like that. Frazetta. What can I say? You don't even need the Frank in there. You know which Frazetta I'm talking about. This is Frazetta book cover art, which is what we know and love and adore and respect Frank Frazetta for. Yeah, book cover art. We're going to look at this, and we're going to look at the books that I own that are pictured in here. I mean, not the literal copies that I own because I didn't make the book, but I own some of the books that are. Let's just get on with it. Let's just get on with it. And we're here at the table with Frazetta book cover art by J. David Spurlock. Complete collection, definitive reference from Vanguard. They do a terrific job. Actually, the book is very nicely presented. The book covers ghosted onto the end papers. They're very nice. Very good paper stock, very heavy. Yeah. We'll flip through this relatively quickly because you're going to go buy one of these yourself if you don't have it already, and then we'll get into it. Frank Frazetta, right? I mean, he was just this guy who came out and seemed to not really be like a fan of fantasy literature. He didn't seem to really read a lot of fantasy in particular. Came out, started to do this kind of like really sort of trashy stuff. And then somehow was the guy that changed fantasy illustration forever and just invented what fantasy looked like. He was a Tarzan fan, right? And was very, very happy when Ace contacted him, right? Hired him to do covers for Tarzan books, right? Their re-releases of the Tarzan books. But I guess he was a little bit unhappy about the fact that they kept the artwork. So he says he didn't put as much effort into those books, those covers, those paintings as he could have because he was bitter about that. But still, I think this is also a young artist still finding his style, still finding his kind of skill level, right? So one of the things I want to do is actually show you the books that I own, right, that are featured in this book, The Monster Men by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Not a great example of Frazetta at his best, obviously, but everything about Frazetta, including these kind of, you'll see this a lot, trees or logs with this kind of dripping algae-looking stuff all over it, and lots of kind of winged creatures here and there. But here we go, the Monster Men. That looks like a Monster Man. A Monster Man. It's a Monster Mash. More Tarzans. I don't have any of the Ace Tarzans. I'm collecting those in Grosset and Dunlap because I'm just weird. I have this. This painting was used for Beasts of Tarzan and then reused later by Ace for Richard Lupoff's biography of ERB, Master of Adventure. I have that one. This is really where you're seeing just, his ability to just draw these or paint these sinuous looking cats and stuff. Terrific. Everything about Edgar Rice Burroughs is, well, the master. Here's Edgar Rice Burroughs, effectively the guy that invented what we know of now as the fantasy genre, via adventure stories. And then illustrated by the guy who invented fantasy illustrations. This is a good one, right, with the purple. Lost on Venus, the Carson of Venus series. This is one of the planetary romances or Sword and Planet series. I was a huge and remain a huge fan of the John Carter of Mars series. But these are just these tiny little, like smaller format mass market paperbacks. 50 cents on the cover price. Mine's obviously a little bit later because the one in the book says 40 cents. But it doesn't matter. It still has the super cool Frazetta painting. So he was working with, the Edgar Rice Burroughs bigger series as well, right? Not only just the Tarzan books. I hope that I'm not, because it's kind of hard for me to see the screen here, getting too much glare, but it looks like we're pretty good. This painting I've always just absolutely loved. But I'm a monster guy. We know that about me. Sea monsters are just always a win. But this is where you see Frazetta really starting to get that sense of motion and a sort of circular movement to it. Really just brilliant. Just great work on the seas there. And again, you can really see just the development of him as an artist when the detail in this kind of lizard sea monster thing that is super ridiculously cool. Here's another one, Land of Terror again, Edgar Rice Burroughs. These are like the Pellucidar books, right? The Hollow Earth kind of thing. Dinosaurs by Edgar Rice Burroughs. You're starting to see his sort of female form that he's really famous for coming into play here. This is still back when, covers and publishing in general was still a little bit more conservative. That's something you're going to see sort of develop in his art, and then also just on what the publishers were and the book trade, etc., were willing to go for. In some cases, you can see that the art seemed like it was just kind of cropped, right? There's no, as opposed to Land of Terror, where you're getting the entire scene and there's just layers of, there's this like a huge, some kind of flood is happening or something, and dinosaurs, and then like the saber-toothed tiger in the back, and mammoths going way back there. And then this one is just the character and the two cats. Fantastic, right? Just gorgeous. This is a book that I read. I can't say I'm a huge fan of the book. Edwin L. Arnold's very, very, very old science fiction novel, Gulliver of Mars. I don't remember when this was written, but it was like a late 19th century thing. Yeah, it was supposedly one of the books that, 1905, one of the books that inspired Edgar Rice Burroughs to write his Mars series. His Mars series was better, but the painting right here, terrific again. And I'll draw your attention to that circular kind of composition that you see pretty often on Frazetta. And remember when I said there's the trees that are kind of dripping with kind of moss or something, right? This is early still in his career, and he's developing an aesthetic. You can see that happening before your very eyes. This is maybe not, I don't think this is anyone's favorite. The just kind of super weird horse, Warriors of Larn by Gardner F. Fox. I'm a Gardner F. Fox fan, but, come on, right? Just pure fun. Very corny. What else can you say but sort of male power fantasy, but it's just a hoot. The cover, this isn't Frazetta at his best, but he's getting there, right? He's still developing, and he's also still kind of bitter about the fact that Ace doesn't let him own his own paintings, which is a little bit weird. I don't think that's still uncommon. You could see that at this point he was starting to do movie posters, and that they would then reuse for the novelizations of movies. And novelizations of movies seems to have pretty much fallen away. I think every once in a while there's one. And then, of course, they do the movie tie-in cover for books that have been adapted into movies. But back in the day, I mean, who was reading the novelization of What's New Pussycat? Crazy, but they were there. I got this one in one of those big lots of eBay books and was so excited to have this, Tales of the Incredible, in the old comics tradition, with this new Frazetta cover that's so cool. And you can, again, you're seeing now the development of just the greater detail in this alien's body, the sinewy thing and all the veins. And again, going deep back into the astronauts in the background and the rocket ship and the moon or planet up there. These are terrific books in spirit. This was the first one of, I don't know if there were going to be more Tales of the Incredible. You can see Vault of Horror here. I don't have. This is the only one of these I have. These are EC Comics reprints. Not the best way to experience the EC universe. Mine, of course, has encountered water at some point in the very distant past. Look at that. Listen to here. That's usually a bad sign. But I'm still just delighted to have that little piece of weird sci-fi and comics history. This I was surprised to find that I actually had. Rogue Roman by Lance Horner. We're guessing that that's not really his name. These are these kind of cheesy adventure things. I mean, if your name is Lance, we're going to go Lance Horner, and you're the author of Golden Stud. Okay. Still, this cover is just fantastic. It's another one where it feels like there was probably more to the painting. I don't know. Maybe there wasn't. That was just removed, and it's that sort of just the characters on a white background. But now you're seeing the detail in the muscles and just everything about this weird scene. The savage novel of a slave whose passions fed the fires of Rome and overturned an empire. I want that text on the cover of my autobiography. Conan the Adventurer. This is where, obviously, I was like, as a young teenager, I was reading these, buying these, and it was all Frazetta. He was the guy who just absolutely got it. Like, he locked onto Conan, locked onto him. Fantastic. I have a whole video on all my Conan stuff that you are going to have to go and watch. We're just going to look at these original Frazetta covers. Oh, right. The one in the book is still nice and white. I know that they retouched these and everything for the book. Mine's nice and faded and sat in somebody's house who was smoking cigarettes. It's got purple sprayed edges. It's terrific. This is the original Lancer. That's Conan right there. That's what Conan looks like, in case you were wondering. We're going to just keep going. Conan the Warrior. Do I have this one? You bet I do. I have a different edition of this. These were passed from publisher to publisher a little bit. So I don't know who did this one. Was this Lancer? This was Lancer. But this is obviously a different trade dress. They had put the numbers up there, started numbering them. Kind of cuts that art down into a box that I don't love, as opposed to this one where you're getting really almost all of the book. But whatever, right? Conan the Warrior, and boy is he a warrior. Again, you're just seeing this Frazetta, who was kind of a bodybuilder kind of guy, right? Into physical culture back in the day. And so that sort of muscle tone stuff was really important for him. And he understood that form, both the male and female form. And he just used it to his maximum, just absolutely maximum. Everybody has seen this painting. It's one of his most famous. My copy is kind of faded in a way. It looks blue. Right? Very extra blue. Maybe that was even done intentionally, because this is the UK Sphere edition of Conan the Conqueror. This is the original Lancer. But they reused that art, and I don't know if this was just the years have been unkind to the ink there, and turned it a little bit blue, but this really looks like they ramped up the blue at Sphere, but it gives you a little bit more detail there. This one feels a little bit more washed out. But this to me looks like what I've always seen this painting as, more of a kind of a deep kind of purple and red. Conan the Conqueror. This is another, looks like kind of movie poster, movie tie-in thing there. Conan the Usurper with the giant snake. Is this my favorite Conan cover? It may be, even though we don't see his face, and that's kind of a no-no, right, to have the character's back to you. But look at that. Tell me you don't want to read the story right now. Dynamite. On the same page. This kind of Mask of the Red Death painting really feels like it almost could be in that, to cover that Poe story. But so much going on. And again, you got that kind of flow of, there's almost a circular kind of thing to it. The fabric, just perfect. Super painterly. Absolutely dynamite. I have the Ace edition. This is the original Lancer, but they were effectively the same thing, right? Just a slightly different trade dress as that bounced around as the Conan series. There was really the Robert E. Howard, then sort of backed up by, some will say, intruded upon by Elsbreg de Camp and Lynn Carter. But that's, we're not worried about that stuff today. I need to get these Thongor books. I need to get all these books, but that's, Thongor again. Brack the Barbarian. I have a bunch of these, or I have some of them. I think the series was only like 4 books, but I didn't know that he was working on Brack. Maybe I need to get those. Next one that I actually have, Conan the Avenger. Again, I have the Ace edition. The Lancer looks a little bit different. Just a kind of different trade dress. This also kind of reads a little bit more blue than their version of it. This is another one where you're starting to see, things coming out at you. Like he's literally leaping out at you. And layers of, right, foreground, midground, background. And just in terms of the detail and just how everything, especially bodies, are rendered, you can see the difference. I mean, the difference between this, right, and then going back to, let's see if I can do this without dropping books on the floor, right? This is what I mean, where you're seeing the development of this artist coming from here to here. He's taking enormous leaps in what's actually a pretty short period of time. And this is one of the things that this book really, points out for you, because they're showing these more or less really in chronological order. And you're seeing how this artist was kind of like, that would be fun to do these like Tarzan books. And then he's just creating what fantasy illustration looks like. Yeah. Conan of Samaria. And again, there is this kind of, everybody's in a circle and there's blades moving and bodies moving around and sideways. Nothing. It's rarely ever just a guy standing there. There's motion, there's movement, there's a pent up energy or energy that is in the process of being released. I did not know that he did a Michael Moorcock cover. I was surprised to see that. So I've read this, and, this is the kind of book where you can flip through real quick, or like I did, just soak in this artwork that's so crazy, and especially this stuff that I would never have seen a copy of this, the High Side, kind of biker thing, So he's still doing this kind of exploitation stuff, even as he's still doing a lot of genre work, obviously. This is also kind of where I don't have a lot of these books. I want them. I want them badly. I do have the Ace edition of this Conan the Buccaneer. This is the one, right? I mean, where you see, I don't know if you're able to actually see this, but you can find, obviously, all these paintings, you can find these online and zoom in on stuff, but just like the face that our guy Conan here is making, and it's just, this was the Frazetta stamp here, I think, right? It's Conan atop a pile of writhing bodies. These guys are trying to kill him and they're failing, and it's just this wild, insane scene of extreme fantasy violence. So unfortunately, I only have one more of the books. We'll kind of flip through these, especially this stuff where you're like, what is this? I really want some of these creepy editions for sure. I used to buy Creepy magazine when I was a kid, like all the time. And then he came, he's coming back to Edgar Rice Burroughs later on in the career. A little bit more, again, a little bit more developed as an artist. Even coming back to Lance Horner's weird Roman stuff. I don't know if it's weird. It feels weird. It looks weird, right? It gives you that kind of like, are you sure sort of thing. This is another painting I've seen before where it's just a buck naked guy and then there's an airplane. Beyond the Farthest Star by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Land of Terror, Land of Hidden Men. Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote an enormous amount of books and for a long time was the most successful novelist in the world, at least in America. I love this painting, right? And again, there's just a sort of a circular motion. Here we have the tree coated in moss and stuff. The Devil's Generation. It seemed like he kind of didn't say no, right? Flash for Freedom. Just all sorts of different things. I want these Flashing Swords books. I have some earlier editions of those. There's another Carson of Venus, which I loved that painting. He didn't and wanted to redo it apparently, and so sort of redid it in this way. I think the original one where the ship is going this way and the sea monster is coming up and around this way was actually better. There's maybe more paint skill happening here, but the composition of the original was, I thought, much better in the original version. I'm just going to kind of flip through these a little bit more because you're just going to go buy this book and you will just revel in how just in some cases how crazy this is. And in some cases, these are just enormously, popular and enduring works of art. I remember when I was a kid, I read the novelization of King Kong, and it was just one of the greatest books of all time. I had a much earlier edition that I had. I don't know. I bought it like either a Scholastic book fair, I think. And oh my God, it was so great. But anyway, some later Conan pastiche stuff, I think, right? I remember this painting from back in the day, this Battlestar Galactica book, where he took the cast of Battlestar Galactica and kind of fantasied them up. Made them way cooler than they ever were in that show, which, it was a science fiction show. It was on TV. I watched it. I had to watch everything. These were even tie-in novels to his own characters. That painting that was called Death Dealer. They eventually just were like, we should do a series on Death Dealer and hire somebody like James Silke to write that. And they did. I remember those coming out. I have never read one. You tell me in the comments if you've read those and you think that they were great. I love this Mothman painting. I've seen that before, right? John A. Keel, the Mothman. I love the movie. The movie was really good. What do we say about Battlefield Earth and L. Ron Hubbard? There seemed to be kind of a connection between Frazetta and the Scientology guys. I don't know if that was, they were just paying. They were paying for him. Is this the greatest John Carter of Mars painting of all time, it's definitely up there. Michael Whalen did some covers that you have probably seen that I just adore. But that's, how do you choose that? You can't choose that. It's impossible to choose. They're both spectacular artists. This is the last one that I actually own the book for. I think this came to me in another one of those big lots of books. It took me a while to actually figure out that the title was The Dancer from Atlantis, because we talked about in a previous video the utter failure of that typeface. But here you go. And throughout the book too, which I'm not reading along with, obviously, he tells stories about, or there's little kind of facts about the history of the painting and what happened to it. And in some cases, like, it was sold for $1 million at an auction in whatever year. Like, one of the guys from Metallica bought one of the paintings for like $1 million or $500,000, something like that. They're little things. A lot of times the stories are Frank Frazetta then, was forced to do something that he didn't like because the publisher needed it or wanted it. And then he got the painting back and then he repainted it. Like, he painted over it, or in some cases just was like, no, this wasn't there. And he started over completely fresh. And it's a little bit weird, maybe a little bit creepy, but let's go. I don't know. That in a lot of these paintings, he would send this to the publisher, which you see here in my really beat up book club edition. And then he would get the painting back and he would paint it to take all their clothes off. I don't know. That was Frank being Frank, I guess, right? And so the book kind of ends with this section of hardcovers, because very, very few of his paintings actually appeared on hardcover books. This is neat. This would be something that I would look for, actually. Nelson Doubleday Incorporated. It looks like a hardcover edition of Dracula and Frankenstein together, the original novels. That would be nice to have because of this crazy, awesome Frazetta wrap cover referencing, obviously, the Universal Frankenstein. That has, a passing resemblance to the novel. Again, more just set him loose on John Carter and see the magic. This is another one of those where I've seen this painting and I've never seen the book that it was done for. Sea Demons by Lawrence Yep. This is just a gorgeous, amazing painting. Now we're seeing Frazetta too at the, toward the end of his career, where he really had found himself, his style. And that was it. That was Frazetta. There's the man himself. Frazetta book cover art from Vanguard. And the books featured within that I happen to own in my own personal collection. Comments are open, right? Talk to me. Do you have any of these books? Do you have the books that I don't have? And is it going to happen once the 100-book challenge is over and I start buying books again? Am I just going to go through this book and make sure I have a copy of everything in here? Do I have to buy the novelization of What's New Pussycat? I don't know. How about that? Right? Honestly. Frazetta. What more needs to be said? I am finishing books faster than I can do these videos. Finish this one July 6th. It's the 14th when I'm recording this, so I'm behind. I got 2 more. What did I read? The 5th Druna book after this in the, graphic novel, kind of graphic illustrated sort of category. There's a short story collection coming. Oh my god! I got books all over the place. I can't do all the videos. It's just big deadline energy right now. It's big deadline energy. Bear with me. And anyway, in the meantime, what's going on here? You subscribe, yeah. Watch some other video that is chosen for you by YouTube. Subscribe.